I never thought one day my father would turn my whole life into a joke in front of everyone. He stood up, sneered, and declared that I was useless and would die in poverty. The whole room went silent. Their eyes looked at me as if they were witnessing a living disaster. I trembled, unable to believe what I had just heard. But then something strange happened. That cruel moment became the spark for the greatest victory of my life. A victory that shocked my entire family. When I came back, they couldn't even look me in the eye anymore. Because the child who was mocked that day had turned humiliation into a $1 million empire. Do you want to know how I did it? Don't look away. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss the next part of my story. I was born into a family where my father always saw himself as the center of the universe. He claimed to be successful, the role model I was forced to follow. But do you know what the paradox was? I had never seen him happy, never seen him truly proud of anyone but himself. And I, his only son, was always the target for all of his disappointment. I grew up under the weight of comparisons, in the sting of bitter criticism. Every slightly lower grade, he would call me worthless. Every small failure, he would repeat over and over that I didn't deserve to exist. What do you think happens to a child raised in an atmosphere like that? Have you ever been turned into an invisible person by your own family? Yet this adversity gave me a strange kind of sensitivity. I listened, I watched, I remembered every detail around me. I learned to hide my emotions, to endure, and most importantly, to explode at the right moment. Can you believe that the long silence inside me had been feeding a fire my father never even knew existed? I wasn't the good, successful son he wanted me to be. I was clumsy, I failed, I was even considered trash in the eyes of my own family. But deep inside, I carried an ambition so great it could swallow humiliation whole. And that ambition was waiting for one push, one cruel enough word, to unleash a storm. So can you guess where that push came from? Do you believe a single insult could turn a failure into a millionaire? Put yourself in my shoes for a second. If your father stood in front of everyone and declared you were useless, what would you do? That day, the room was packed with relatives. It was supposed to be just another ordinary family gathering. Everyone was laughing, eating, chatting, and I thought I'd be safe. But I was wrong. My father suddenly stood up and tapped his glass against the table. The sharp sound cut through the room and silence fell instantly. Before I could even understand what was happening, he began. My son is a failure. From today, he will no longer receive any help from me. No one could breathe. Dozens of eyes turned to me, probing, pitying, judging. I froze, my heart pounding as if it would burst out of my chest. Can you imagine your own father hanging a useless sign on you in front of everyone? A few relatives tried to hide their smirks. Others shook their heads as if I were nothing but a burden to the family. My mother stayed silent, not saying a single word, and that hurt more than 1,000 knives. I felt like the whole world had just turned its back on me. But my father wasn't finished. He went on to say that from now on, I would be on my own, with no one to rely on. This boy will never succeed. Don't expect anything from him. His words dropped like a death sentence. I swallowed hard, my mind went blank, I wanted to scream but couldn't. Have you ever been humiliated so deeply that you just wanted to disappear on the spot? What would you do if the one person who was supposed to protect you stabbed you straight in the heart in front of everyone? At that moment, only one thought burned in my head. I had to prove him wrong. At any cost. And that single moment of humiliation lit the fuse for a journey I never could have imagined. Do you want to know how I turned my father's sentence into a $1 million victory? Stay tuned until the end of this story, because what comes next will shock you even more. I left that party like a shadow. My legs shook, taking steps without knowing where I was going. The whole world around me seemed to collapse. The mocking laughter of my relatives echoed in my head like an unhealable scar. I walked into my room, slammed the door, and collapsed onto the floor. For the first time in my life, I truly felt useless. I looked in the mirror and saw a complete failure, and I believed my father's words. Have you ever believed you were nothing more than a zero? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, wondering if life was even worth continuing. The insults kept repeating in my head like a horrifying song. I asked myself, if I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even care? I wrote a list of everything I had messed up in life. The list was so long I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. I had thought I would become someone to be proud of, but it turned out I was just a joke. Have you ever sat alone, writing down every failure in your life, and felt like you were worthless? At times, I wanted to run away from everything. I imagined disappearing to some place where no one knew my name, where no one cared. But then, a strange thought flickered in my mind: what if my father was right? What if my whole life was nothing but a zero? The thought made me choke. I refused to let my entire life be framed by one cruel sentence. I refused to die as the image my father had painted for me. Have you ever craved the chance to prove everyone wrong about you? In the midst of despair, something inside me began to stir. A tiny flame, fragile but persistent. And I knew I had a choice: let it die, or let it burn. That very moment of collapse opened the door to a completely different chapter of my life. After that long night of collapse, I woke up with red-rimmed eyes, but a strange thought echoed in my mind. If my father had cut off all support, then what did I have left to lose? I could fall to the bottom, or I could risk everything to climb to the top. I started digging through everything others had dismissed. Scribbled notes. Crazy ideas my friends once laughed at. Even the failures I had buried. Can you believe it? Sometimes what seems like trash is actually pure gold. One day, I saw an opportunity online that everyone else had ignored. A tiny business idea nobody thought would succeed. But I saw a spark that no one else noticed. I decided to grab it, like a drowning man clutching the last straw. And then, the unexpected happened. The very first attempt ended in complete failure. Money lost, time wasted, pride shattered. But within that failure, I discovered a loophole no one else had seen. Have you ever lost everything, only to suddenly find the secret to winning the whole game? I dove into research, learning, working myself to exhaustion. Day and night, ignoring hunger, ignoring fatigue. In my head, only one sentence repeated: I will prove him wrong. And then, the first call came. A random customer who had noticed my product tucked away in a tiny corner online. Just a small deal, but it was enough to make me realize the door had opened. Can you guess how that tiny deal turned my life upside down? Do you think someone dismissed by everyone could turn a small opportunity into $1 million win? Don't look away. Because what happens next will shock you. And if you want to follow me to the very end of this story, hit that subscribe button right now. The beginning seemed bright, but the road ahead was suffocatingly dark. After the first deal, I thought I had found the golden key. But harsh reality quickly slapped me in the face. The second customer vanished without a trace. The third canceled the contract just before signing. My meager capital evaporated in just a few weeks. Have you ever felt like you touched the light, only to be thrown back into darkness immediately? I was mocked by friends. Acquaintances bluntly told me I was delusional. Some even bet I'd quit within a month. And the worst part? My father heard the news, just smirked, and said, "I told you so." Long, endless nights, I sat in front of my old computer screen. Dark circles under my eyes, calloused hands, and my brain felt ready to explode. I tried everything, from stupid strategies to reckless moves. Most of them failed. There was a time I had to choose between a meal or keeping the project alive. Which would you choose, a full stomach or an unfinished dream? I chose the dream, and went hungry. Days of hunger made me dizzy, yet I kept pounding the keyboard, believing results would come someday. I fell countless times. Tears fell onto the keyboard so much that some keys became worn. But every time I wanted to give up, I remembered my father's cruel words. And that humiliation lifted me back to my feet. I dove into learning, reading every resource I could find, messaging strangers for advice. Some scolded me, some blocked me, but a few gave me crucial hints. I gathered every fragmented piece of knowledge and stitched it together into a bold plan. And then, just when everything seemed about to collapse again, an unexpected turning point appeared. An opportunity one never imagined was right there, staring me in the face. The opportunity came just when I thought I couldn't take any more. An email landed in my spam folder, the subject line short and simple: interested in your idea. At first, I thought it was a scam. But when I opened it, my heart raced. The sender was a young entrepreneur I had admired from afar. He said he had seen my prototype on a small forum. "This idea isn't perfect, but I see enormous potential in it." Can you believe a golden opportunity was hiding in the spam folder? We arranged to meet. I was so nervous I almost missed the bus. My father's voice echoed in my head, "You'll never succeed." But when I stepped into the cafe, everything changed. The entrepreneur looked at me intently and smiled. "You know, I was also looked down on by my entire family once." Those words hit me like a jolt, reminding me I wasn't alone. I presented my idea, clumsy but full of passion. He was silent for a long moment, then suddenly said, "I'll invest." I froze, unable to believe my ears. Someone willing to bet on me, a person I had failed again and again before, was now trusting me. And here's the biggest twist. The entrepreneur was actually an old friend of my father. Someone my father had mocked and dismissed years ago. Now he chose to invest in me, like a slap straight back at the past. Do you think that's coincidence, or fate? From that moment, everything started to change. I had capital, someone who believed in me, and most importantly, a chance to prove my father wrong. Do you want to know how I turned that investment into $1 million leap? And are you curious how my father reacted when he heard the news? Don't miss the next part. The investment was like a fire, burning through every limit inside me. I was no longer fumbling in the dark. I became the leader of a small but fearless team. We threw ourselves into work like maniacs. Days we forgot to eat, nights we forgot to sleep. Sometimes I felt like collapsing, but just thinking of my father's words would make me rise like a warrior. Have you ever been turned into an endless source of energy by a single insult? Our first product launched, and I was too nervous to even look at the results. But when the orders started popping up on the screen, I knew the moment had come. I screamed, tears streaming down, as if the whole world had finally heard me. Revenue skyrocketed week by week. From a few $1,000s to tens of thousands, then suddenly surpassing 6 figures. Everything happened so fast even I was stunned. Do you think someone once called useless could earn $1 million in just a year? The moment I hit the $1 million mark, I stood frozen. I couldn't believe hands that once shook in fear were now touching a number my entire family had never dreamed of. I remembered the room where my father humiliated me in front of everyone. Same person, but two completely opposite worlds. The news spread fast. Relatives who once mocked me now sent congratulatory messages. People who turned their backs were now trying to cling to me. And the biggest surprise, my father could no longer stay silent. He came to me, face stiff, eyes a mix of astonishment and bitterness. The man who once declared I would never succeed now had to face an undeniable truth. Do you want to know what he said when he faced me, after everything that happened? My father came by on a gloomy afternoon. He stood at the door, silent for a long time, as if he didn't even dare knock. I opened the door, and in that moment, all the bitter memories of my childhood rushed back like a storm. We sat across from each other, neither of us speaking. He looked around the luxurious room I had built, eyes full of disbelief. Finally, he sighed, "I was wrong." 3 short words, but enough to make my heart tremble. Is this the same man who humiliated me in front of everyone? Or just an old, powerless man facing an undeniable truth? He tried to smile, but his voice shook. "You did something I never expected." I'm proud of you." I froze. The man who once cursed me had now spoken the word proud. Could you forgive someone who pushed you into the abyss and then came back to apologize? Part of me wanted to scream, to replay every humiliating word from the past. But another part felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had spent my whole life running to prove him wrong. And now, he had admitted it. The biggest twist came when he made an offer. "Or, shall we work together?" I laughed, a sound both bitter and freeing. The man who had once abandoned me now wanted to ride my success to regain his own glory. What would you do in that situation? I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. I simply looked him straight in the eye and said, "I don't need to work with you. I made it here on my own." The silence was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the moment I truly freed myself from a lifelong shadow. Do you want to know how I ended this story, and the final lesson I learned? Don't miss the last part. When the door closed behind my father, I sat in silence for a long time. My whole life had been spent proving him wrong. And now, I no longer needed to prove anything. I didn't win for money. I didn't win for fame. I won because I had broken free from the chains he had bound me in for so many years. $1 million is just a number. The most valuable thing is the freedom, confidence, and pride I reclaimed. Have you ever realized that real victory isn't out there, but lies within your own heart? I looked back at the path full of blood and tears. Without that humiliating moment, I might still be a powerless dreamer. Without that despair, I might never have discovered the strength within me. Have you ever thought that pain could be fate's disguised gift? I no longer resent my father. Because without him, I wouldn't have become this version of myself. Strong. Someone who dares to stand up. Someone who dares to chase a dream. The lesson I learned is simple, yet bitter. Never let anyone else define your worth. Don't let a cruel word turn you into a prisoner of disappointment. Are you ready to stand up and turn your pain into the fuel to rewrite your own story? And remember, no one has the right to judge your destiny, except you. If you have ever been belittled, pushed to the bottom, believe that this very place could be the starting point of your greatest journey. And I am living proof. If you want to hear more stories full of trials, yet overflowing with strength, hit that subscribe button now. Because who knows, the next story could be yours.